I am grateful for this sharing of our Sunday mornings for a second summer. It's been enriching to work together on this theme of resilient communities. Now, the image that we chose to work together with to represent resilience is a tree on a steeply eroded bank, still in place despite the situation of having had the soil washed out from beneath its center, gripping onto both sides of a gulch. We want our communities to be like this tree, beautifully strong against all odds. It is living because it is rooted and grounded still in enough soil. It is alive because it sent roots out before the washout events eroded its place, its home. And because it's alive, it keeps on sending roots deeper and wider into the current reality. A couple of weeks ago, I had the honor of traveling the 660-mile Trail of Death that Potawatomi people were forced to take from Indiana to Kansas in 1838. Because white settlers decided that land around the Great Lakes was too good for Indians. Our pilgrimage group sought healing for peoples removed from ancestral homes and healing from white historical amnesia. By truth-telling, listening to the needs of those harmed, accepting accountability, and contemplating actions that can be taken to repair harms. We experienced divine reversal of being welcomed by the Potawatomi on the trail as we were guided by elders, and at the end when we visited the Citizen Potawatomi Nation in Shawnee, Oklahoma. I have hope that my experience on the pilgrimage will inform my congregation's next steps toward dismantling the doctrine of discovery, calling on the Christian church to address extinction, enslavement, and extraction done in the name of Christ on indigenous lands. And your congregations, I'm sure, are working similarly. However, it's not my aim today to move us to discern our next steps to repair harm. Today, I offer the example of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation as a resilient community in present day, an example for us. This is not to say that because a community of Potawatomi is thriving, we can forget about harm done. That's a topic for another day. I offer this evidence of resilience. This weekend at the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, the annual Family Reunion Festival is happening. It's a celebration of Native culture for tribe members that's been happening since 1999. 3 days of dancing, cultural classes, games, traditional foods, and a golf tournament. Yesterday, the tribal elections were decided there, with on-site voting from 7 to 2 and election results shared at 3 p.m. I can't help but contrast that event with the election that we'll experience as U.S. citizens in a few months. The night our group arrived, we became guests at a banquet. The banquet opened with the women's drum circle and with prayer spoken in Potawatomi. Beautiful ribbon skirts and ribbon shirts were worn by our hosts. I happened to be seated at the table where the chairman and the vice chairwoman were eating. Chairman Barrett regaled us with tales of a bison harvest snafu a few years ago. And the next morning, Vice Chair Capps fed us biscuits and gravy for breakfast. We toured the beautiful Cultural Center Museum and the Bald Eagle Aviary, where injured birds that can't return to the wild have a permanent home. I named just a few of the highlights of our 2 days visiting the Citizen Potawatomi Nation because this tribe is a living example of a resilient community. Such a moving contrast to their tragic experience of being marched away from their home nearly 200 years ago, burying members of their tribe nearly every day during the 2-month trip made mostly on foot to a bleak wilderness. In Oklahoma, we witnessed evidence of their resilience in their culture, especially in spiritual practices and in the way they're dedicating resources for education. There are over 38,000 Citizen Potawatomi Nation tribal members around the world. Any tribal member attending college is eligible for a $2,000 scholarship each semester. Our group also got to meet this summer's Potawatomi Leadership Program participants. Over a dozen 18 to 20-year-olds that applied for this opportunity to live at the nation headquarters there for 6 weeks of intensive language education and cultural education. They had been there a mere 5 days at that point and had learned how to introduce themselves in Potawatomi, including their tribal name and clan, as well as where they were from. It's not a secret that these young adults are being groomed to work for the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, to start or continue in college after this program and gain skills that will be put to use for the benefit of the nation. This is all good news for at least one tribe of indigenous peoples. As one speaker told us, in this odd, pessimistic inflection point that we find ourselves in the world, the Potawatomi are at a growth point. Here is a present-day resilient community that may have things to teach us about how to become resilient or how to continue being resilient, because Pastor Sue helped us see that historically, our 3 faith communities have been resilient. We've been resilient because we remembered who we are. To maintain resilience, we'll need more than that. Writer and poet Cole Arthur Riley has said, "Resilience isn't really about returning back to the way you were before, but is much more about reclaiming whatever new shape your form has taken. A resilience that doesn't really ask us to forget, but that carries the memory of whatever harm or whatever fire we've been through." Again, the tree image comes to mind. The harm it experienced was the removal of lots of soil from directly below its trunk. The land it was rooted in was no longer available to it. Against all odds, it lives. If we desire this kind of resilience for our communities, encapsulated in that desire is facing the reality that there will be loss, perhaps in a form that we have not yet imagined. To want resilience is to know that our existence as communities will be threatened. In order to thrive after that loss or losses, we need to be ready to reclaim whatever new shape our form has taken. I propose that this readiness, this rootedness, can be practiced. And today I offer a handful of such practices. The first one is this: the practice of collaboration with other communities. It expands our three root systems into the soil of great love that we need for resilience. Similarly, the Citizen Potawatomi are one of 9 different Potawatomi bands who come together annually for a gathering to celebrate their shared heritage across differences. One of the other bands is our geographical neighbor, the Prairie Band Potawatomi, with headquarters north of Topeka. The 9 bands don't collapse into homogeneity. They maintain their own identities while celebrating commonalities, including religious practices. So the practice of hospitality and cultivating loving, trusting relationships is one way of growing out of either-or thinking. Also at the top of the list is embracing challenges that arise. To paraphrase another letter to the early church, we can boast of having suffered through COVID and being smaller because of it, knowing that suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Now, it's challenging to embrace troubles, but we can practice. We can also cultivate resilience by practicing confidence and creativity. And after we try something new, being ready for feedback as an opportunity to extend our roots even deeper. During our return trip in the van, the pilgrimage group took notes about new ideas for the Potawatomi Trail of Death organization to better tell their true history of Indian removal. We came up with an idea of putting QR codes on the historical markers and planning a bicentennial event in 2038. Our shared Manhattan Interfaith Justice team is a creative foray for our communities, so let's watch for feedback on that collaboration to cultivate our strength and courage. This next one might be counterintuitive. Hold on loosely. Gripping tightly to the way of doing things most familiar to our community can make it impossible to discern together what it is that makes us what we truly are. A key to resilience is flexibility and trusting that we are able to grow deeper into the soil of sacred love where we can hold on in troubled times. Language is an example I would give of the Potawatomis discerning what to hold on to that is taking on a new form through a mix of technology and in-person lessons. The Citizen Potawatomi Nation are making their language accessible for all ages. And lastly, I see the Potawatomi way of living out kinship with creation, of praying to Creator, giving thanks, offering blessings as another key to resilience. I pray that we will want resilience enough to face the next hard times with hearts open to seeing the opportunity in it. For the next challenge to have a fertilizer-like quality that wakes up our roots and kicks them into high gear. That we will know that we can get better at creativity, creatively and lovingly walking a sacred path. Doing so with a soft stance, moving toward people, even people who are hard to love, and moving to right wrongs, even evil systems that are hard to dismantle. Being rooted in the earth and rooted in the source of love, and able to say, we are still here.